But to mention something very interesting. When you look at all the books that write about Hanukkah, they always write Syrian, Greek, Syrian. What's that mean? It was Syria or it was Greek? It was Greek or Assyrian. So I saw something very interesting. Somebody was writing about the fact that just a few days before Hanukkah, we saw this miraculous victory over Syria. Syria is a country that since Israel became a country, they have been at war with us. They've accumulated all their weapons over the years. I'm talking about a country, not a group of terrorists. This is a country with, tremendous amount of weapons of all sorts. And miraculously, within a few days, it was all wiped out without any resistance, nothing standing in the way. Anyone who has a little bit of an understanding of what was going on in Israel and the part that Syria played, it's clear that this is like not some a miracle, but and really, in some ways, more miracle than many other things that have been happening in the last 3 months. So they pointed out that someone wrote to the Rebbe sort of a length that somewhere in one of the English storybooks about Hanukkah, they wrote that those people who were in the times of Hanukkah were from Syria. And he wrote that everyone knows it was the Greeks, the Yevonim. Why do we say Syria? And the Rebbe says it was actually Syria. And the reason why we say the Greeks, because at that time, Alexander the Great, which is Greece, he was, conquered a lot of places. And basically the culture and the ideology, everything was Greek. But the actual country where the miracles happened, with whom it happened, was Syria. So it makes it even greater when you think of it, that the defeat of Syria just a few days before Hanukkah was actually the defeat of Syria that happened in the time of Hanukkah. It's a very interesting observation. Okay. We're going back to Basi Legani. Usually we have a class that we learn about Hanukkah Exodus. So I'm going to start that actually in the afternoon, the 1 o'clock class, and then we'll continue the next few days of Hanukkah. And then we'll finish the Maimer. But today we'll be doing the Maimer. So we are here on page 89. Yeah, 89. I want to explain something, but before, let me just go over briefly what did he explain in this chapter, that there's Shtus the Kedusha and the Shtus the Klipa. Shtus the Klipa is what we've always understood to mean foolishness, that when a person doesn't follow Torah, doesn't follow mitzvahs, doesn't follow Hashem's guidance, it's foolish. It's only hurting himself, causing destruction to everything and everyone around him. Yes, you don't see it black and white, but it's foolish not to trust that Hashem says that this is not the way to live. So anything that has to do with klipa is foolishness, because it goes against Hashem, so it goes against truth. If it's against truth, then it's foolishness. And what is shtus the kedusha? That according to this, shtus and kedusha are a contradiction of terms. Shtus is klipa, and kedusha is the opposite. We explain, no, there's something called shtus de kedusha. And what is that? That means a level in serving Hashem that transcends logic, that's above logic, that's higher than logic. How could there be such a thing, and what does that mean? So first he explains that Hashem himself is above the realm of logic. And explain what that means is that not only that Hashem is beyond our comprehension, because there are a lot of things that are beyond one person's comprehension, but someone smarter could comprehend. And there are certain things that are even deeper. So even those smart people can comprehend, but there's someone even smarter that they can comprehend. And there's certain things the Gemara says that nobody in the world can comprehend. Only Shlomo HaMelech was able to comprehend. If Shlomo HaMelech could comprehend it, it means that it's in the realm of logic, but it's totally beyond the realm of our logic, but not out of the realm of logic, period. But Hashem is out of the realm of logic altogether. Hashem's existence is a different kind of existence. And the reason why logic can't grasp him is not because he's too deep, too high, too abstract, but because he's in a different realm, not the realm of logic. So if a piece of wood can't comprehend something which is logical, it's not because it's not smart enough, even if it'd be not big enough. If it'd be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles of this piece of wood, it would make absolutely no difference. Wood and logic are two worlds, and there's no connection between wood and logic. There's no way that wood could even approach to understand logic. In the same way, logic has no approach to a realm that's beyond logic. It's a different realm. It's a different category of existence. So we explained that be'etzem, logic itself, and even the deepest logic and the source of all logic, is something which is created by Hashem, just like a banana, no difference. Which means that the highest level of Chachma, I wish I would have that. Do I have that chart here in front of me? We don't have it in this primer, do we? In the references, maybe at the end. Let's see. I think it was the other mimer. Right. Okay, you know what the chart looks like. We used it a few times. Here it is here. Just to look at it visually. I want to show you something. So Chokhmah in each world, that's logic. That's the source of logic. But this is logic and wisdom of Asiya. This is logic and wisdom of Yetzira. This is logic and wisdom of Bria. This is logic and wisdom of Atzilus. So that means the highest, deepest, most abstract wisdom and logic that exists in the entire creation is where? Is up here, Chokhmah of Atzilus. But that's where it begins. So what's above that? Above that is not a deeper logic. Above that is no logic. Above that is Ein Sof, infinite. To get a little bit of an understanding of what we're talking about, is that it says in Chassidus that the distance between this Ein Sof and Chokhmah of Atzilus is infinitely greater than the distance between Chokhmah of Atzilus and a physical rock in the Gashmizik world. In fact, compared to Ein Sof, Chokhmah of Atzilus and a physical rock are both equal distance. Because they're both finite, even though one is so much more than the other, like a drop of water compared to the Atlantic Ocean. Or what if we would take the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean and all the oceans in the world and all the lakes and all the rivers and say, which is closer to infinite, all that or one drop of water? And the answer is they're both equal distance. All those bodies of water are infinitely distant from infinite, and one drop of water is infinite, so they're both the same distance. That's what it means. That as deep as this Chokhmah is, and there's trillions of levels between this and here, but compared to Ein Sof, they're both equal. Which means, good morning, Chokhmah is a creation of Hashem like anything else. It doesn't feel like that. It feels like this is it. This is the essence of everything, because Hashem created it that way, and it is the essence of the world, of the finite realm. But then there's something which is infinite. So basically, serving Hashem could also be on these two levels. Either serve Hashem with coming from a place of logic and understanding, and that's when we do mitzvahs that are logical. Hashem wants us to do that, like mishpatim, learning Torah. That's where we engage our logic. And then there are mitzvahs that the only way to grasp them is not through logic, but through devotion and dedication that within us transcends logic, and that connects to the essence of Hashem. And of course, the example we gave was the chukim. Yes.
So how
Who Rabbi Yitzchak?
yeah. So how come he did something that's above the logic that we knew that if he can't even grasp it because it's above it, right? It's above. That's it. How is knew that he did
No, so what it means is that he was determined to do this mitzvah. Which mitzvah? To bring simcha to chassav v'kala. So there's a way to do it which is measured and calculated, which means you do so much, not more. Or in this case, you can dance, but not in a way that is totally like wild and people are going to be embarrassed of the way you're dancing. When you're doing something and you're not taking consideration any kind of logical calculations, then you go all the way, which means he did something which the other rabbis were saying, this is embarrassing. But what he was thinking was one thing: I'm here to make Chas and Kala happy. No matter what I do, if it's going to make them happy, and the more happier I can make them, that's going to be observing the mitzvah in the proper way. To do that had to come from a place in him that wasn't measured and wasn't calculated, and the thought even occurred to him. It's not that he was thinking, no, it's not really appropriate, so I'll do it this way. It means he was so devoted and so dedicated to this mitzvah. It came from a point in him that logic was out of the way. Which part? The part that he danced with juggling, which is normally inappropriate for someone in such a position. In other words, someone who's a Rav, a big Rav, and a Rosh Hashiva of him in those days, especially talking about the times of the Talmud, it would have been totally inappropriate to do such a thing, because it's a degradation of the respect and honor that comes to a Torah scholar. And that's why the other one said, Rabbi said, not only I feel embarrassed, I think you're an embarrassment to all the rabbinate, to everyone, that someone like you should be dancing in such a way.
So it's above the
It means by Hashem, it's above Atzilus. In a person, it means there's a part of my neshama that also is above and beyond intellect. We find another story similar to this. It happened before this. Where's that story? Story with David HaMelech. There's a story with David HaMelech in Tanakh that they were bringing for the first time the Aron to Yerushalayim. This was like part of the process of getting ready to build the Beis Hamikdash. And as they were bringing it, there was dancing and singing and dancing and singing. And David HaMelech, it says, was dancing and whistling and jumping up and down. His wife, her name was Bathsheba, she was watching from the house, and she was mortified. This is her husband, king of Israel, this great tzaddik. And when he walked in, that's the first thing she said to him. She didn't go to the women, to the Jewish home class, I guess. First thing you say is, Shalom Aleichem, hello, how was your day? But the first thing she said to him was, it looks like from the story in Tanakh, was, I'm embarrassed of what you did. So embarrassing. And he said, I don't care. This was to rejoice that Hashem Shechina is coming back to Yerushalayim in a permanent way, and therefore I dance with all my heart and soul without any kind of thought, what, when, where, and how. So basically, this is brought down in Chassidus, that this is another example of something like this. In fact, Chassidus explains the source, that she was also a great tzaddikin, but she was connected more to the Aveda with seichel, logic, and therefore it was limited and calculated. And she felt that this was not appropriate for him, just like Rabbi felt it's not appropriate for Shmuel bar Yitzchak. But he was coming from a place where it was above logic. Yes.
Right, so then, like, we're saying Hashem is above the realm of logic, and then we serve him in a way that's above logic, like in the examples. Sorry?
That's what I'm trying to say, but you can say it better.
Wait a second, repeat what you
Okay,
said.
if we're
Repeat
saying,
what you said and what Lee is trying to say.
if we're saying, and that Hashem is above the realm of logic, and then there's ways like the example of David Hamelech, that we can serve him like beyond logic.
Yeah.
Does that mean we're kind of meeting him closer than if we use logic? Like, I don't know, example I can think of is like if someone's bilingual and they speak their first language English and their second language, I don't know, Spanish. You talk to them in Spanish, they understand you. Then if you speak to them in English, like they understand you better because it's like their first language. Is it like we're meeting Hashem closer and we're serving him like, well, like because we're saying he's above logic, so we're almost like meeting him at his level because we're serving him in a way that's above logic. That's true.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm serving Hashem with logic, that means it's coming from a place in me which is somewhat limited. His logic is going to be limited. If I'm serving him and something in me comes out which is deeper than logic, which in a different language would be Yechida, the essence of the Neshama, if it's deeper than logic, then my connection to Hashem is like transcends all my personal limitations.
So it's like more about him then? Like
Who's him, Hashem or me?
Hashem.
It's all about more about Hashem than me, yeah. So this is one of the things where I was going to explain before, that this is one of the differences. When a person serves Hashem with logic, and he understands that this is the right thing to do, to a certain extent, again, on a very subtle level, there's a little bit of me involved in some way, not only Hashem. I understand that this is right, and this is good, and this is the proper thing. So my understanding plays an important part here. So it means that there's a certain part of me involved in serving Hashem. When a person's service to Hashem comes from a place which is out of the realm of logic, it's almost like I'm out of the picture. Something in me that's so deep, that's beyond my understanding and my calculation and my valuation, that takes over and carries me way over the realm of logic and just connection to Hashem. So the connection to Hashem is deeper. What does it mean deeper? There's no ego, there's no yesh involved at all. It's the highest level of bittul that could be.
But how do we do that if like we also, it's hard because we do learn so much, and like let's say for example just kosher, it's like just to follow the mitzvahs you have to learn all the small pieces, and sometimes like it's easier to understand why the halacha is a certain way based on the reason, so then you almost could just naturally get to a way where it's based on logic as opposed to.
No, we need both. We do need both. That's why Hashem gave us. We have to serve him with logic, and we have to go. This is the idea of Nasa v'Nishma, that we have to dedicate ourselves to Hashem with our seichel, and also in other areas it goes from a place which is deeper than seichel. But usually we talk about this in a situation where Yiddishkeit is at risk. Let's say like the story what happened to the Jews in Russia, or another time where they were ready to give up their lives. That means that it came out, what came out of them was this dedication that's above seichel. But here we're talking about that even if it's not about, God forbid, giving up your life, Mesiras Nefesh, but dancing at a wedding, doing a mitzvah. So to a certain extent, the fact that there are many stories of tzaddikim and even stories of chassidim where they went out of their way to do a mitzvah, like there's a famous chassid, Rabbi Hillel Paracha. Rabbi Hillel Paracha, you must have heard the name, he was one of the biggest chassidim of the Mittel Rebbe. He tried to become a chassid of the Alter Rebbe, but it didn't work. So he became a chassid of the Mittel Rebbe. What happened to him was that he met a chassid whose name was Reb Zalman Zezmer, and he was blown away by him to the point that he got very excited about Chassidus Chabad. But he was already a chassid of a different Rebbe called Reb Martha of Chernobyl. So it was a very sensitive thing. He didn't want to offend his Rebbe. And also he was attached to his Rebbe. It wasn't so simple to detach yourself. But when he heard Chassidus, he was so taken over by it that he felt that he must have this. And the story is that one day he just couldn't hold back anymore. And he actually went away to the Mittel Rebbe. But I just want to say, before he went to the Mittel Rebbe, he was still in his searching. So Alter Rebbe was alive. So he went to see the Alter Rebbe, but he didn't want to openly meet the Alter Rebbe because he's still a chassid of another Rebbe. So what he did was he decided he'll stand from the distance and listen to what he has to say, see how it goes. By the time he got there, the Alter Rebbe was gone. So he found out where he's going next. He went to that place. By the time he got there, the Alter Rebbe was gone. This happened a few times. So he decided he's going to find out when the Alter Rebbe is traveling again, but this time he'll go there before the Alter Rebbe is scheduled to come, so he won't miss him. So he came to this place before the Alter Rebbe was scheduled to come. Amazing. But again, he didn't want to identify himself openly because he's not a chassid of the Alter Rebbe, so he hid under a bench, and he prepared a question in Gemara Erchen. Erchen literally means evaluations. There's a portion of the Torah that talks about evaluations. If a person says, I pledge my value to the Beis Hamikdash, I pledge someone else's value to the Beis Hamikdash. So there's a whole set of rules, how much money it means, what you have to give. But it's a very complicated Gemara, and he had a very, very complicated question. He himself was a brilliant Torah scholar. At the age of 13, there wasn't a sefer of Torah that was printed in his days that he didn't study. So you're talking about a brilliant Torah scholar. And obviously this question was a very difficult question. So he was under the bench, waiting for the Alter Rebbe to start speaking. But instead of giving a mimer, the Alter Rebbe says, if a young man has a question in evaluations, let him first evaluate himself before he's evaluating others. He heard these words and he fainted. By the time he woke up, the Alter Rebbe was gone again. He never got to see the Alter Rebbe, but he came a chassid of the Mittel Rebbe. And when the Mittel Rebbe was so simple either, he had to sneak away from his house. He went to daven and then take his talis and tefillin. Instead of going to shul, he went on a wagon and he went. And then the family realized that he left, and his Rebbe warned him that if you leave me, you'll be on the floor with your face up. That's the term that he used. It was another way of saying, and I think we spoke about this once. Well, why would he curse him? The way to understand it is that imagine a king. The halach is if a person rebels against a king, they lose their life. The Gemara says, "Man mal karabana," that these tzaddikim in their territory where they ruled, they were like kings. Maybe not in halacha, but in principle, it was like that. And therefore, he's really rebelling by going away from him and going to someone else. Anyway, he was afraid that they're going to come chasing after him to schlep him back. So he told the wagon driver to go as fast as you can. He went so fast that the horses crashed, the wagon turned over. But Baruch Hashem, they survived. They got back on the wagon, and they came to Lubavitch. And he was so afraid of that Rebbe's blessing that he went straight to the Mittel Rebbe and he asked, for a bracha to protect him. So the Mittel Rebbe said, "What happened on the way here?" So he said, "Oh, we had an accident and I fell out of the wagon." "And how were you laying on the floor?" "I was laying with my face up." I said, "Okay, so whatever he said was already fulfilled. You were laying on the floor with your face up, and now you're safe. You can continue." So he became one of the biggest chassidim of the Mittel Rebbe. Now I have to remember why I even mentioned him. What?
So with logic and transcendence.
Right. So I'm giving an example how it could express itself in other mitzvahs. He was known that when it came to Torah mitzvahs, he was like nothing budged him. And not talking about observing a mitzvah or not, means going beyond the letter of the law to the point of nothing in the world would stop him. And for example, I'll give you an example. It says that a man should choose a place in the shul where they daven. It should be the same spot every day. your concentration is different if this becomes your spot. He traveled a lot. So there was one shul, whenever he traveled, he would stop in a certain place. One time he came there, because he didn't live there. One time he came after a long time not being there. They did renovations. And in that spot, they put a big bookcase. So he had them remove the bookcase so he can daven in the same spot that he davened last time. So one time, it was winter, and he went out to do the bracha on the new moon. In the winter, sometimes you can't get a new moon. One day went by, another day went by, a third day went by, and he wrote a pan. He wrote a pan to the Tzemach Tzedek, asking for a bracha that the new moon should show up because he doesn't know if we'll be able to survive it. He said, it happened once when I was younger, so I was able to handle it. Today, I don't know if I'll survive it. It means that the desire and the connection to do this mitzvah comes from such a deep place that it's not something which he decides I'll do this way, that way. It just comes from a place which is not calculated. Like a mother, God forbid, sees her child drowning, she's not going to think, what can I make it, not make it, just jump in, try to save them, because the logic is out to lunch at that moment, completely. And that's the way it is by certain tzaddikim at certain times. Yeah. So what I wanted to explain is what's the reason in the Frierdiker Rebbe's generation, in our generation, why is this the time that we're emphasizing some sort of a new avodah which is called shtus de kedusha? And the Rebbe gives two reasons. And even though it doesn't say this in the Rebbe's words, but both of them are relevant, but it could be one of them is more relevant than the previous Rebbe's generation, and the other one is more relevant than our generation. What are the two reasons? One reason is that we're living in a time where the shtus of klipa is shtus beyond shtus. It's like, it's so powerful, like Rebbe wants to use the term, that even those people that are fighting kedusha don't even know themselves why they're fighting. The crazy things that are happening, that's beyond comprehension. I don't know if you saw this, an interesting thing. The public menorahs. Did you see this article? Public menorahs was started about 50 years ago. They never pushed it very much. But they were very big, there was very big opposition. And there was a famous lawyer called Nat Lewin. He was the one who kept fighting it, state after state after state. But who were the opponents? Who were fighting to put up the menorahs? Public menorahs. It was the Reform movement was fighting it. And what was their reason? We're trying to make a separation between state and religion. If you put up a menorah by a White House or any other state, building, that means you're not allowing the separation. If you don't allow separation, then they're going to force us, with our religion. We have to keep the two things separate. So they were fighting for years against the public menorahs. This week, I don't know the names of the people, one of the top people in the movement says, 50 years ago, I fought the menorahs my reason was that we have to be a Jew at home, but outside we got to be like everybody else. You don't display your Judaism in the streets. But now I understand that the Rebbe was right. That if you don't display your Judaism in the streets, you're not going to be a Jew at home either. And then another very big activist in the movement writes, me too, I was wrong. For people say I was wrong, it doesn't happen too usually. But because even the fight then was not up his seichel. In Russia, who were the people that were fighting Yiddishkeit in Russia? It wasn't just the communists, it was Jews. They were called Yevsektia. These were Jews that fought Yiddishkeit with all their heart and soul. They killed people who were Rosh Hashivas, Rabbanim, Sheikhtim, teachers of children. Jews can kill another Jew because he's teaching Torah. It doesn't make any sense. It was a hate that was beyond logic. So the Rebbe says, when you see darkness that's beyond logic, the only way to fight it is with Kedusha beyond logic. That's one explanation. And there's another explanation on the positive end of things. What does it say in the Maimer? Why was he dancing in a way which is above logic? Why is it by wedding? How come we don't find, or why doesn't it say in the Gemara that he also served Hashem in this way with other things. Why did they choose the example of a wedding? So he explained in the mind, because a wedding is a time where Ein Sof, the infinite light of Hashem, shines. The only way to be a vessel for the infinite light is through an Aveda above Seichel. So therefore, Dafka by the wedding, and it comes out from the Rebbe Sikh, is the same as with us. We are now approaching the time of Mashiach. When Mashiach comes, it'll be the infinite light of Hashem that will be shining in the world. So the Keli to receive that infinite light is also an Aveda that's higher than Seichel, higher than any kind of calculation. And that's how we can receive this light. So there are many levels in this. Everything is relative. So when we say above Seichel, doesn't always mean, that some people feel, okay, you have to do things that are shtus. No, that shtus is not the word. It's got to be shtus the Gedusha. Just because it's shtus doesn't validate it. It has to be shtus the Gedusha. And even shtus the Gedusha has to be something that has some sort of a source and basis in Torah, and that, God forbid, do something which is against Torah. Okay. So now he's coming to the conclusion of the Maimer, bringing it down to practical. Page 90. Yes, there are certain norms of conduct that people follow. And the reason why they do it is, if you ask them why, the answer is, that's what people do. That's the way people do things. That's why I'm doing it like that. Which means I don't have to understand it. I don't have to validate it. If that's what people do, that makes it the right thing to do. And these things, these norms that we're talking about, it's like a fixed law, like a chayk. You can't move it. In English, it's called to go with the flow. If that's what people do, then I got to do that too. And if I'm going to be different, it's like the worst thing in the world I can do. This is one of the big things that gets in the way of tznius. This is the fashion. This is the way people are dressed. I don't want to look any different. It's like almost like the worst thing. You'll be mortified to chas v'shalom. Somebody would say, you're not going with it. You're not doing what everybody else is doing. Where the Kabin, it gives an example of certain forms of conduct, like well-mannered behaviors and the likes. It doesn't explain what it means by that. But maybe he's referring to things that are maybe in the realm of tznius and other areas, that this is the way people do it, so therefore it's not an issue. This is why we need lahavchi elamayim. So this is, in a sense, again, this is an example of some sort of shtus the kedusha, which means you can't really explain it. You don't understand that you have to do it. You're only doing it because everybody else is doing it. And who says you have to do what everybody else is doing?
That's just the kedusha.
I'm sorry, shtus the klipa. I already turned shtus the klipa into shtus the kedusha. This in itself, that instead of me thinking what's right and what's wrong, like this is, it says the Gemara about Avram Avinu. There's a pasuk that says Echad Haya Avram. So the Gemara says, what does it mean Echad Haya Avram? He was Echad. The whole entire world was on one side, and Avram was on the other side. I mean, when you go against your neighbor, it's one thing, against your community, your country, but the whole world believed one thing, and he says, no, this is not emes, I'm going this way. Like the guy with the car, the story where a guy, his wife calls him as he's driving and says, please be careful. I heard there's a crazy guy on the road that is going against the highway. So he says, one, there's hundreds of them going against the wrong side of the road. He was the crazy guy. So basically the whole world is going one way and one person is going the other way, you need to the Kedusha. So we have to transform it. Being that the opposition is shtus, so the kedusha part has to be a kedusha also. And for example, time that people have set aside for eating, time that's set aside for sleeping. Mitzad hergesh ha'olam, the way people ordinarily act is kavuyim b'itim azman. These things are fixed. This is the time to go to sleep. This is the time that we eat. Now, supper time, the world does not exist. I know someone that at his wedding, his grandfather was there. It wasn't that old of a person, but he was at the wedding. He was from Germany. German Jews are also very, punctual with time. So at a certain point in the wedding, he said, "It's Schlafstunde," and he left the wedding in the middle of his grandson's wedding, his son's wedding. No, his son's wedding, not grandson. The grandson told the story. In the middle of his son's wedding, he said, "It's Schlafstunde, time to go to sleep. Good night," and he left the wedding, which means sleep. Now it's time to eat. And the same thing is with going to work. Like, I'm going to work now. Don't disturb me with anything else. I can't. I must be at work. Even people that don't have a job where there's a boss who's going to say, "Where were you 9 o'clock?" It's his own business. But business is business. They have to be there at time. In his man, most of these set times are built in Azazim, or built in Itchem Klal V'Ikar. There's nothing else that can override it, nothing else that pushes it out of the way. I can't. Everything else has to sort of revolve around this. Everything else has to adjust itself according to my times. No, it was manic, but davening and learning, oh, that's a different story. They they're not fixed. They get pushed around. I'm supposed to be learning at this time, but something came up. I have a meeting, I have something else. It'll be tomorrow, it'll be later, it'll be earlier. And in some cases, not only are they pushed off to a different time, but they're pushed off completely because I'm too busy. That's for example, that story that I told you about the chassid who didn't come, and he told the Rebbe because his galoshes business was very evolving and he couldn't get away. In other words, he never came to the Rebbe. Coming to the Rebbe, which he used to do regularly, got pushed out of the way because of the business. Is there any wisdom in acting this way? Who knows when his time comes? Like it says in the Medrash, "Ein Adam Shalid Leima." People have no control over the angel who takes away a person's life, and he can't tell the angel, "Hamtinuli, wake me. I have to make my accounting. I have to tell the people in my family what to do." And of course, this is something which you see open in Ruach HaKodesh. This was the last time the Fried Rebbe said. Gave his out on Friday, and on Shabbos was the Stalkus. The Rebbe says clearly he was alluding to what's going to be. How could he spend his life and invest all his soul energy into things that have no substance? And the main thing, and that's the whole reason why his neshama came down to this world, shechech legamri, he forgets about it completely. How does that make any sense? And the answer is it doesn't make sense. It's a ruach shtus, shemachas elem, this is the ruach shtus that doesn't let him feel the emes. So therefore, the avodah is lahapich, not just not to do it, but lahapich. Take that sort of that movement in me, that mode in me of doing things that I'm not paying any attention to logic, and use it, but in the other direction. Just the opposite. I'm going to set aside time for learning, and nothing's going to push it out of the way. The Frierdiker Rebbe, there's a Tzemach Tzedek. I'll finish with this story that a chassid once came to the Tzemach Tzedek, and he asked him, don't get scared, this is a very high level. And he asked him, I want to know if I fulfilled the way you're supposed to set aside time for learning. It says a person has to set aside time for learning. It's called Kviyus Itim the Torah. And the first question that the neshama is asked when it comes up there is, did you set aside time for learning? So he told the Tzemach Tzedek that he has his time set aside for learning, and since he's married for the last 15 years, he never missed it once. So the Tzemach Tzedek said to him, let me ask you a question. How much money did you save up since you're married? I'm giving a number. Let's say he said 10,000 ruble, big amount of money. So he said, what would happen if you were told that if you miss one day, you can get 10,000 rubles, which is double the amount that it took you 15 years to accumulate. Would you miss the one day or not? He said, no, I wouldn't miss. Pretty good. Then he said, what would happen if you were told that if you continue, if you don't miss today's day learning, you're going to lose all the money that you accumulated since you're married? He said, I don't know. So some said you still have work to do. But that's what it means. Shtus the Kedusha, that I set aside time for learning. No matter what's happening, I'm not going to go through this time. Someone once told me, my grandfather, it was the chassid of the Rebbe Rashab, the previous Rebbe, the Rebbe, that he had a certain quiz that he would learn every day a certain amount of Mishnayos. And he used to finish the whole Mishnayos. He finished it many times. But he lived in Paris. He was visiting the yeshiva, which was in Beaumont, which is you need a train to go from one place to the other. So one time he realized that it was late and he never did his shir yet. So he called a taxi, paid whatever, it cost a lot of money in those days, to get back on time to do the shir. In other words, I can't miss it no matter what. So that's called shtus. In Kedusha, you don't have to go so far, you'll do it a little bit later. No. If I want to stick to it, not budging and that, but in a way, shtus the Kedusha. Okay. You can come in, yeah.
Hi, girls, we have a workshop now with Mrs. Krasniansky. So go downstairs, grab a drink. Whatever you want, it's gonna be in here, yeah. The workshop with Mrs. Krasniansky is gonna be in here.